first part of this list showed that the world of rock hides gigantic talents behind the keys. But the truth is, there are many great players to whom history hasn't yet given due credit, and you asked for more names. Therefore, our search for these masters continues now. 10 rock keyboardists who are criminally underrated, Part 2. Vincent Crane. A native of England, Vincent Crane was one of the most intense and inventive minds in British rock. Heading Atomic Rooster, he transformed the Hammond organ into a tool for dark and heavy textures, laying the fundamental foundations for hard rock and global proto-prog. However, his trajectory was ultimately hindered by mental instability and chronic changes in the band's lineup. His visceral expressiveness and technical mastery of the keyboard make him a vital artist for the genre, even though he remains distant from the general public. Airey. The experienced English keyboardist Don Airey has consolidated one of the richest and most productive careers in the entire history of rock. His vast resume includes collaborations with Rainbow, Ozzy Osbourne, and Deep Purple, where he has always demonstrated a unique ability to unite the weight of metal with melodic sophistication. Despite being responsible for iconic lines in the discography of giants, Airey often operates away from the main spotlight. His impeccable technique and ease of adaptation make him an indispensable pillar of the style, even without proper media recognition. Johansson. Hailing from the Swedish scene, Jens Johansson projected himself as one of the fastest and most technically gifted instrumentalists in modern metal. Famous for his era with Yngwie Malmsteen and his tenure in Stradivarius, he fused the discipline of classical music with power metal, creating highly complex solos. Because he operates in a niche and very specific genre, Johansson is rarely cited in general lists of great musicians. However, his influence on the development of virtuoso keyboard playing in metal places him as a name that deserves much deeper appreciation. Gregg Rolie. The effervescent American scene of the 60s and 70s had in Gregg Rolie, born in the United States, one of its creative pillars. Founder of Santana and Journey, he was the sonic architect of both groups, blending Latin swing with rock through a pulsing Hammond and striking vocals. Despite his importance in founding these musical empires, Rolie is often eclipsed by later guitarists or vocalists. Nevertheless, his ability to compose unique sonic identities defines him as one of the most unfairly ignored artists of that era. Garth Garth Hudson.
All of my winnings, and I gave my little best.
Born in Canada, Garth Hudson was one of the most singular keyboardists in rock history. As a pillar of the band, he stood out for his innovative use of the Lowrey organ and an erudite musical background that fused rock, folk, and traditional American music into rich soundscapes, creating atmospheres that became the band's signature. However, because he was part of a group focused on the collective without individual protagonists, Hudson often stayed in the background compared to more media-friendly names. Still, his versatility and creativity define him as an essential musician whose technical contribution remains unfairly underrated. Since the subject is underrated artists, be sure to check out our list of guitarists who deserve much more love. Click on the card appearing at the top of your screen. Subscribe to the channel to have your comments answered with priority by our team. And don't forget to turn on notifications to be notified of new releases before everyone else. John Evan. British progressive rock gained shades of erudition with the talent of John Evan, born in England. In Jethro Tull, he introduced a classical background to the piano and organ, being a key piece in the construction of the complex arrangements that defined the band's golden age. Because his technique served strictly the composition and not showmanship, Evan ended up less celebrated than his contemporaries. Even so, his artistic sensitivity and the humor of his performance make him an essential and often forgotten member. Argent. British rock of the 60s reached new levels of elegance with Rod Argent, born in England. Mentor of the Zombies and leader of the band Argent, he polished a style that united psychedelic pop with jazz virtuosity, resulting in compositions that became eternal classics. Although he possesses a consistent career, Argent is usually associated only with isolated hits like She's Not There. From this perspective, his historical relevance and his pioneering role in the transition to progressive rock qualify him as a name deserving of greater prestige. Matthew Fisher. A native of England, Matthew Fisher etched his name in rock history with a solemn and Baroque style on the organ. As a central piece of Procol Harum, he created one of the most famous introductions in popular music, being one of the architects of the union between classical music and rock. However, the excessive focus on a single hit ended up hiding the depth of the rest of his work and production. His polished musicality and the cultural impact of his work make him a keyboardist who should be celebrated far beyond his best-known themes. And so Steve Steve Porcaro. American Steve Porcaro was primarily responsible for designing the modern soundscape of the band Toto. As a synthesis specialist, he explored cutting-edge technologies and electronic layers that helped dictate the production rules of pop rock throughout the 80s. Despite his masterful studio work for names like Michael Jackson, Porcaro is little remembered individually by the general public. His artistic vision and intelligent use of electronic keyboards confirm him as an innovator who shaped the sound of a generation. Lavitz. Born in the United States, T. Lavitz was one of the architects of modern fusion and a master of rhythmic articulation. As a central piece of the Dixie Dregs, he elevated the level of jazz rock by fusing the energy of progressive rock with the precision of country and classical jazz, using pianos and synthesizers to create solos of stunning agility. Despite being revered by professional musicians, Lavitz is rarely cited by the general public due to the technical and instrumental nature of his work. However, his ability to navigate complex genres with fluidity and his technical brilliance consecrate him as one of the most unfairly forgotten instrumentalists of his generation. It has become clear that the talent of these keyboardists was an essential fuel for the sound and innovation of rock, even if many of them still operate behind the scenes of the mainstream media. Recognizing these masters is to keep alive the true complexity and historical richness of the genre. But the list is vast, and the discussion continues. Who else do you think deserves a place in Episode 3? Write it down below in the comments. And if you enjoyed this list, don't forget to leave your like, subscribe, and share it with that friend of yours who keeps saying that rock is only about the guitar. Thanks so much for staying until the end. See you in the next video.